thank you for joining us. I know some familiar names in the people coming here. That's fantastic. My name is Jean-Georges Perrin. If you didn't take any high school French, I would recommend you go by JG with me. It's the easy way. But if you've done French, Jean-Georges is great. I work for PayPal, where I may or may not be building data mesh. And I also am the president of a user group called ADA-UG, which is the Artificial Intelligence Data and Analytics User Group. And I'm also a lifetime IBM champion. And I will be your host today, where we have the great honor to be with Charlotte Ledoux, Amy Raygada, and Eric Broda. Okay, so I will let them introduce themselves, and then we will jump directly into the topic at hand. Okay, which is data contracts. Is it the future of data management? Charlotte, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you so much for having us tonight. Just to start, I must say I'm really happy to see that wherever we are across the globe, we share the same issues regarding data, and I think it's great that we can discuss this today together. So thank you so much for this kind of event. So I'm Charlotte. I have about 8 years experience in consulting. I started in supply chain management. At the time, I implemented a lot of ERP in many companies. And then I turned towards data and AI in consulting as well, where I was specialized in data strategy and governance, mostly as a consultant. And then about a year and a half ago, with the people I met there, we decided to launch our own company, which is called Vallai. And we are building right now what we call a data space as a service, which is a space where you can share data and collaborate in real time with data and business teams, and also with external partners, because the space is fully secure. So I'm happy to be here to discuss. That's it for me.
Thank you. Amy, you want to go next?
Sure thing. Well, my name is, first of all, thanks for organizing this talk. And I don't know if it's Scott joined at the end, but thanks to him also for, starting this conversation. My name is Amy. I'm a data product owner at Swiss Marketplace, and I basically enable people to access data and apply best practices. I've been working with data for 8 years plus as a data engineer, data quality engineer, and now as a product manager. And one of my greatest passions is providing clear data strategy and guidance to different data teams, eager always to learn more, so we can enable them for more incredible things, and knowing that they can make actually a great impact doing what they love. And basically, I'm very glad to be here tonight and learn about you and your own journey with data contracts, which is a hot topic right now, I think. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. And finally, Eric.
Great. Thank you for having me, Jean-Georges. I've been in the industry probably about 35 plus years, so you can kind of gauge my age, I suppose, in some respects. I've been an executive at large banks and large insurance companies. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've been running my own boutique consulting company. And my firm focuses on data mesh and building ecosystems, and obviously a lot of the technology components below that. I'm also an author on medium.com, and I've written numerous articles on data mesh, patterns, architecture, operating model, et cetera, that kind of elucidate a little bit of my experience so far. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Eric. So I would like to make sure that this is interactive, but not a completely messy environment. Okay, so please raise your hand if you want to ask a question, or if you want to ask a question, type it in the chat, and I will read it to our audience. And if you've got a specific question for someone, you can of course ask the question directly to the person you want. Okay, so now I'm going to. So the way I've done that in the past is our guests do not know the questions before. Okay, otherwise I think it's going to be a little bit too easy. And they can probably confirm that, right? That they did not get any questions from me. The only instruction that I tell them is to be ready to prepare a little introduction, which I just did. Okay, so it can be really very natural, not scripted, and I'm going to take notes as well, so we can actually bounce back on some of the questions. So, Eric, I'm going to, and the thing is, I'm going to ask some of the questions to the three of them, some of the question to only one person if it's more relevant, and you know, just trying to have a conversation like friends. It's actually the day of the Beaujolais Nouveau in France. Okay, so just imagine you are in a bar having a glass of Beaujolais Nouveau and having a good time. Okay, so Eric, for you, what is a data contract?
So you give me the first question, the tough question. So I'll try and answer that in a relatively simple way. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of give and take in this, but the simplistic definition is that data contract is a formal agreement between a service and a client that effectively describes how they're going to exchange their data. Now, a practical definition, the one I try to use is data contracts are the fundamental capability that makes data easy to find, consume, share, and govern. And when we look at the tooling for data contracts, those are the things that make it easy to define, build, secure, and deploy, and even monitor and manage data contracts. So that's probably the simplest definition that I could give you, Jean-Georges.
Okay, that's fair. Amy, do you have any addition, or do you think that's right, or what's your take on that?
No, actually, he's right. It's a way of enforcement where we make basically sure that the producers are not changing things downstream that will mess up a little bit the consumers. So in simple words, it's pretty much that.
Okay. And Charlotte, you would imagine that I'm asking the same thing to you as well, right? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with this definition. I think also what's a good point is that it's a collaborative document. I'd say that it's something that is going to evolve in time. It's not something that we write once and we're done, you know. So that thinks it's something very specific. That's why it's a hot topic, I think, also.
So what I'm hearing is agreement, enforcement, collaborative, some kind of life cycle around this document to make it sure that it's a living document. Am I correct there?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. So how do you materialize a data contract, Amy?
Yeah, sure. Like in our case, we are going through this data mesh transformation in our organization, and we took one data product and basically implemented the data contract there just to make sure, you know, that everything was working, because our problems at the beginning is that the data was wrong. You have no idea why. There were broken data sets that require a lot of effort in debugging why they were not working anymore. And then when they finished debugging after a few days, they found out that some columns were dropped upstream. So a way actually to avoid this was to implement this data contract. We now are replatforming to microservices. So it was a good use case for us. And basically what we did was implement the schema validations. We use PubSub. And basically with this, we create a pipeline where basically, you know, we have all these CI/CD reinforcement when we actually receive alerts with something goes change upstream. And then if something changes and we need to add an extra column, for example, or remove it for some reason, the data engineer will check how this will impact our data products. And then he will say, yes, no, we can do it or not. And then the data product owner will initiate these kind of conversations to see why this was done. We need to communicate more so we don't have actually these broken in the future. And once an agreement is set up, we basically create a version 2 of this data set that is going to be, living along with the other one for quite some time until we can actually decommise version 1 and implement version 2.
So you're leveraging something like Kafka or PubSub architecture to notify your downstream users of a potential alteration of the contract?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, we have a lot of reinforcements here. We have 5. We have 1 alert when the backend engineer create a change on this service. Once we get this alert, there is some tests that will run in our pipeline for data engineering. After that, we will have something as well, some alerts that will commit from Terraform. And then if everything goes well, or if we need to do some changes, there is a trigger to create actually version 2 and create another data set with the changes. And basically, we need another one that create validation for this one to see if actually matches, the new data product or the new derived data set, that will come to life after B2. Or for example, if they just eliminate what column and it's not impacting us, it will be set up to nulls. And then, we just continue with life and all good.
How do you store a data contract?
We have everything in GitHub with GitHub hooks and actions there. So basically it's all stored right there, and then we trigger all these tests with GitHub actions on top.
Okay.
And also there is some other procedures happening on GCP directly. So yeah, that's how we basically store the schemas. But we, of course, before doing that, we have a lot of conversations between the product management, the backend engineers, and everybody just to agree what kind of a schema and the metadata we're going to be using. Because we need to take in consideration this as well. It needs to be documented at the end of the day. And as Charlotte mentioned, to be able to evolve with it, we created all these versioning and all these metadata as well, just to make sure we continue evolving with this contract. Otherwise, if you don't reinforce these or create new versions or have these conversations between product and also engineering, the things won't work out.
Yeah, makes sense. And Charlotte, are you following a similar strategy, or what do you do with your data contracts?
Yeah, what I've seen at some customers is like what they call, a meta store. Could be, also in GitHub or other documentation tools. I think the hard part is when you have to agree on what's going to be in it. So you have to agree with your different consumers what you're going to write in it. So maybe just for a start, use some classic documentation tools is a great way just to give it a first start before going into many different specific tools. I think a good way to start is to document what the consumers want, and then translate this after into GitHub or other tools.
Okay, and Eric, what do you see with your customers?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of different things that I see. First off, I think it's important to recognize that, as Charlotte and Amy mentioned, there are some semblance of data contracts today. So, for example, database schemas may be elements of a data contract. The CSV files that we kind of know and love and ship all over the place have field names. So that may be part of the format or structure of a data contract. If you look at Parquet files, they have structure and format in it. APIs, application programming interfaces, especially if you use things like OpenAPI specifications, which define a request, the response, as well as the structure and format, and they even provide things like example data and code, but also security schemas that provide access rights. I see also, if you're in the event world, event streaming, they have schemas, whether it's Avro or JSON schema that define those. And those are stored in things like a schema registry. Kafka has one, for example. The thing I also see out there is, although this is relatively ad hoc, data contracts are manifested in many cases implicitly, if not explicitly, more often than not implicitly in pipelines. Or transformations. So that's historically what I see, and I think most people are probably still using it today. Now, to answer the question, where are they stored? It depends. Like I said, with Parquet, it's embedded in the files. With OpenAPI, we typically put these things in GitHub as kind of the book of record, but they're all surfaced through registries of some way, shape, form, or another. But here's the problem that I see, and I welcome feedback from the panel here. The problem that I see, and this is the thing that my clients tell me all the time, and to be honest with you, this is the problems that I solve every day, is there's a lack of consistency across, APIs, Parquet, events, what have you, in terms of, how do I define structure? How do I define format? How do I define security? And I haven't even got to talking about how do I define data quality expectations. It definitely doesn't address data transformation capabilities. And how do I address lineage? Maybe through versioning. How do I address service level agreements, the expectations, if you will, of the data? There isn't that much information around governance that are today in the typical data contracts. So there's a lot of room to grow, and there's a lot of opportunity to enhance where we go with data contracts, which is why I think this is such a popular discussion today.
Yeah, so I'm not going to pick on you, Eric, but the thing is, when you're talking about the embedded schema, you would find Parquet or Avro or something, and then how do I add my SLAs there, right? How do I add my data quality rules directly in Parquet? There's nothing like that, right? And then you're stuck with Parquet, but not everybody's using, hey, I want my CSV as well, okay, right? So we're all kind of a little bit drawn to this technology, and we are not and we are not kind of seeing like an abstraction as in a certain way, which I think the data contract should be.
Absolutely.
So it brings me a little bit to the question of, you kind of a little bit, Eric said a little bit of about that, and I'm probably not going to ask the question again to him, but Charlotte, what do you see inside the data contract? If I'm opening the box now, okay, the Pandora's box, okay, what's inside? Okay, because we talked about what they are, how they materialize, but what am I going to put? What's kind of the scope of my data contract?
Yeah, I've seen several things. Again, of course, yeah, like Eric said, it's a bit everywhere. So, and it depends a lot also on the level of maturity of the organization, for sure. I think maybe you should have like a glossary. What's the meaning of the data that should be consumed? I mean, in business terms, first, I'd say. Then you'll have the second layer, which is a bit more technical, like metadata. What are the data types? This kind of information. And then, like Eric started to mention, maybe the third part of it would be the data quality metrics that have to be defined. What are the levels authorized? What do we want to have as a consumer? Are there unauthorized values or whatever? This should be also defined. These are mostly the three big categories that I've seen, but I'm willing to hear what the panel has seen.
Amy, what do you put in your data contracts?
Yeah, actually, we take in consideration some data quality as well. So we have, for example, data types, null values, these kind of things as well. As Eric mentioned, this is super important. And it's something that needs to come already from upstream, because usually we used to get a lot of dirty data from upstream, and then, the cleaning, the modeling, everything was just a pain. And as of now, I can say that this approach is working. Most of the data we got on the data set was already clean I will say clean enough. And from there on, when you actually check the other data quality we do in DBT or other tools that we use are actually passing and they look quite good. But we had to define a lot of things in this conversation initiated, as I said, between backend engineer, product management from the product side, and then the data product manager from the other side. So there is a lot of conversations going on before actually implementing this schema, right? Because at the end of the day, it's an agreement. It's like signing a contract with, I don't know, for buying a house or something like that. You have to read on the small letters and see what you want. So I think the conversation is one of the most important part to make it successfully, because there is a lot of way of implementing in Medium, or you can see new tools coming. But yeah, they only care about this technical perspective, but you also have to take in consideration all these, business kind of decisions that needs to be done before you actually create a contract that is valuable enough to bring a data product, to life.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. I'm watching the chat at the same time. Okay, so if I'm not taking your question right away, it's probably because I've got a similar question down the road or something. So, but don't worry, we'll make time, and your answers will be your questions will be answered, not your answers will be answered. So now we've got all these things. A question I have, and it's because I may or may not be using them, is how when you're looking at the architecture, and I know that a data contract is not linked to a data mesh, right? But the thing is, we are here together because we met through the data mesh learning community, and we advertise this webcast through the data mesh community. So I guess that most of the hour is going to be the data contract in the context a little bit more of a data mesh. So looking at the data mesh architecture, okay, when you see the data products, the mesh and the different planes, Eric, how many data contracts do you see or are you picturing in such an architecture?
Sure. I think when I think of a data mesh, it's really an ecosystem of data products. So I think that's kind of the very first thing to understand. Now, what I've seen is especially recognizing that the data product is the quantum, I think, the architectural quantum, as Zama calls it. It is the fundamental building block of a data mesh. What I've seen is every data product has data contracts. And the minimum, the absolute minimum, is a contract that says, how do I get data into it or ingest it into the data product? The second absolute minimum is, how do I get data out of it? So typically your production or ingestion rather and consumption contracts are the thing that everybody starts with and thinks about. And those arguably are the most important. But a very, very close second, there should be data contracts for every data product that says, how do I discover? There should be a slash. I'll just use trivia. I'll trivialize it. There should be a contract for a /discover endpoint. There should be a /observe endpoint in a data contract for a data product contract. There should be a /usage endpoint, for example. There should be a /SLA governance or governance attainment endpoint that says, have I actually, whether it's usage or whether it's service level, performance, latency, whatever the case may be, I should be able to, as a data product, have a contract to be able to emit or allow third parties, internal or external, in some cases even external, to actually access the information about my data product. There should be contracts, for example, data contracts that say, how do I look at the logs? If I'm a developer, I want to see what's going on. There should be a data contract that describes, how do I get alerts? So when something goes bump in the night with a data product, how do I find out what actually has happened? And that may go to the operations staff. So those other endpoints are the things that I find are missing from many of the discussions around a data contract. Now, I would argue that if you don't have those, you're going to have a lot of problems, hitting your SLAs for your primary data contracts around ingestion and consumption. So that to me is the absolute basics, not just ingestion and consumption, but those other things that provide discoverability, observability, operability are table stakes in my mind. Now, the interesting thing about those is the ingestion contracts and the consumption will take many different forms. Like we said earlier, some of those could be APIs, some of those could be Parquet files, some of those could be CSVs, what have you. But the most interesting part about the other data process /discover, observe, /operable endpoints are that they are APIs. And because they're APIs, I can actually, with an open API spec, provide a relatively solid and fulsome data contract for that. If I have some basic tooling to actually create the data product, when I say create it, create those /discover or /observe endpoints, what you can actually do is just dramatically simplify the creation of these data products and their data contracts, but also make them consistent across the enterprise, which leads you to a whole new opportunity around data governance, surfacing data quality, service level expectations, and that type of stuff. So the simple answer, Jean-Georges, is there's a lot of them, but it's really focused around the data product.
Makes sense. Charlotte, do you have a perspective on that, on the number of data contracts you're doing when you're implementing a data mesh?
Yeah, I was thinking about it when Eric was speaking, actually, because I think maybe for a company who has like a very big data team and who is already like building data products, I mean, like they have a real cycle for that is working. For sure, they have a lot of data contracts, and I mean, one data product can have several data contracts because you can have several different outputs. So each of them is going to generate a data contract. So yeah, I think maybe for companies who are much less mature, who are still building their data team and working on their first, data product, which could be reporting or simple dashboards to start with. Maybe I guess for them they have much less data contracts and they're more starting on this subject. So
you have a point on that part, Amy, about the number of data contracts when you reduce it to the data quantum or the data product itself?
Yeah, actually, we have a lot of templates for that. I have like an amazing architect and an amazing team, and we had kind of work on these kind of templates already. And based on product, for example, as Charlotte said, one data set can then derive a lot of different data products. But usually, if you have a big data set that will serve many data products, then with the first contract that you do at the very beginning, because that's the source align, type of domain that you will have on top, and then you will have the subdomains. I think with the one on top might be sufficient at the beginning, because then you can see, based on the products that you are deriving from that data set, how it will behave, and you can adjust that data contract to be, to comply with the needs of the other data products.
So if I understand you correctly, Amy, your data contract is very hierarchical in a way.
Yeah, some way, somehow. For example, this first POC that we created, it's deriving from the data set 3 data products, but we only put one data contract on top of it that will cover all the stuff of these data products. These data products will build up in the past. So basically, we were just switching the pipeline. But if we need to build up something on top of it, another data product, we can evaluate what is in that data set. And if we need to add or remove, or actually add will be the case of an extra column that makes sense, then we just adjust this contract. If it's a total different or a mix between domains, then there should be probably a different one. I think if you go in this direction, because our first case of the data mesh was this, it was more domain, demand stream-aligned product, for the data mesh. From there, I mean, you can do more if you have subdomains under, and you can actually take from the top, all these validations, all these contracts, instead of putting one on each data product, but only, for example, if you have this kind of setup.
All right, makes sense. So one of the questions that came through the audience, and is a question of standardizing this data contract. Okay, are you aware? And I kind of poke Eric here. Are you aware of standardization of data contract, or are you participating or sharing some base elements that would be able to share? Because the thing is, we understand that as a contract is basically defining some exchange, okay, and if nobody's exchanging the contract, then it's okay. The exchange is limited to the people within a very tiny group.
Yeah, there's two elements that I would characterize as I answer that question. There's no all-encompassing intergalactic data contract standard out there. And despite the best efforts of many folks trying to create them, and I think the fundamental issue is this, is the existing set of data contracts, as minimalist and insufficient as they may be, and whether they're implemented in APIs, event schemas, or otherwise, the existing legacy, I'll call it legacy, but the existing environment requires a multifaceted approach to data contracts. So if I look at, for example, APIs, Open API spec is a very rich, robust element of the data contract. It doesn't have everything in it, but it has elements of it. But even within APIs, I could use GraphQL, which has a different approach. When I look at event schemas for Kafka, for example, very popular event streaming product, I could use JSON schema to define the events, or Avro. So here's the thing that I think is actually missing and is achievable, by the way, is how do I provide a registry so that I can actually find the schemas for the data that I actually have. And if I have the ability to find and understand the schema, is there a way within a data product to allow the exposition or the exposing of that data in a reasonably standard, perhaps even within the enterprise standard nomenclature? So the key thing here, if I look at what good really looks like, is there should be a well-known place, first off, to go get your data contracts. And what I've done with my clients is we build, as distinct from a data catalog, which is a great governance tool, Calibra. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is more akin to the Kafka schema registry, something that allows me, but it's much more encompassing, but it's a well-known place to get it. It has two interfaces, an API interface, so a machine readable way of finding the contracts and understanding them, as well as a UX, a user interface, so that mere mortals, so to speak, can actually get look at them. So well-known place to get it, machine readable, human readable. These contracts, because they handle security differently, if you wrap them within this registry, within a data product, you actually have the ability to harmonize beneath the covers, harmonize the security. It won't be perfect, but it'll be better than what you have today. If you then added within the context of the data product, the ability to validate the file. So for example, if I'm moving huge CSV files or even Parquet or other formatted large files, what I really ought to be able to do is I ought to be able to understand the schema, but also, why don't I use a tool which I've done before, which is like, say, Great Expectations, and allow that to actually use that to profile my data and highlight where it doesn't meet my service level or data quality expectations. So now if I can do all that and I put it inside the data product, now I have the opportunity to harmonize it, maybe not standardize it, but harmonize it, and introduce a new capability around exposing data quality metrics, perhaps even lineage metrics, perhaps usage metrics, perhaps governance metrics. And none of those, by the way, are covered under an industry standardized data product yet. So my philosophy on this is where there is a gap, and in all likelihood, I'm not going to be able to influence a true industry or intergalactic standard. There is definitely room within your enterprise to actually provide the capability, especially with data mesh and the local autonomy that comes with ownership, to wrap that capability within a data product and harmonize it underneath the covers to the best of your ability, and provide, perhaps, if you're fortunate, an enterprise harmonization or an enterprise standard that makes sense for you.
So that I would say that a little bit of a minimum, right? Unless you're a gigantic company where you've got simultaneous data mesh project and then everybody's doing his own data contract. Okay, so hopefully this company does not exist, right? No sarcasm attached. Amy, what's your take on standards, and where do you see it going, or are you even ready to share your standard data contract with someone?
Yeah, I think we are ready. As I said, well, our company has a lot of business unit, and we're starting with one of them, and there are some others kind of interested. So we are ready to start, this kind of sharing and see if they would like to adopt it or adapt it to their own needs, because they have different, infrastructure as well. But what I think, and actually what it resonates from what Eric said, and I just wanted to add this, basically these discoverability and all these observability and these kind of things can be achieved using, for example, the data product canvas from data mesh, and then documented. We are getting Atlan now. So in our, dream world, it will be something like that. I don't know if we're going to achieve it, but, that's the idea with all the data lineage and all the documentation that we're going to have there. And I think that's super important. And a way to also document our data contract is also a template. We use Notion in our company. So we have data product canvas. We have another one that is more to product, to discover actually the data product and to initiate these conversations. And until you don't actually initiate this conversation and discover which data product, the reason why, so you can test, all this usability and value and these kind of things, you won't go to the data product canvas. And then, after that, you move to the contract. So you have a little bit of technical information there where you move to the contract, and then, to discover other data products. But I think it's important to have all these steps well defined, because people start maybe with the contract, and then maybe the data product canvas, they fill out half of it, and then no one knows what exactly was done. And that's when the problem starts, because the conversations were not initiated in a very structured way. So that's what we are trying to bring in my team, with all, the cooperation of every single team member. We have data engineers, BI developers, or architect, etc. And all of them are really on board with this, and they are an amazing team. And that's how we are pulling out this difficult journey, because it's not easy. People usually think that leverage the data mesh is like 2 months and you're done. We started with a use case, and we keep moving forward with, now we have like 10 on the pipeline, but it's just slowly how you can keep scaling these. And if you define all these processes beforehand, I think data contracts can be leveraged in a good way, where we have all this data quality and all these documentation. And if someone leaves the company, then you can go back and check what it was done, and you don't need the brain of this person, right? So that's the idea.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I realize that you've said several times that you've got an amazing team. So I mean, that's good to know as well. I also have amazing teams. Okay, so it's not only you having amazing teams. Okay, just to clarify there. Charlotte, do you have any amazing team on you working on the data contract and making standards out of it?
Yeah, we're only 6, So, you know, it's like the
It's
beginning.
an amazing 6
but
pizza
still,
size
6
team.
great
It's
people.
great.
Yeah. So yeah,
We are 10, not that far away.
I'm only kidding. It's great to have great people, and if you and to recognize them, right? And I think this is awesome. And sorry, yes, I realize that there's a lot of people from Europe, and actually, I'm in upstate New York. I'm very, very close to my friend Eric there, just a border away. So yeah. So sorry, Charlotte. Please continue.
I can feed my team with only 1 pizza, so it's good.
It's cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah, what we have been working on regarding this subject of discovering documenting, being able to see which data product is available. What we are working on is what we call an asset registry. So you can find, search wherever they are, the different data sets, of course, data products as well, because we document every dashboard, every reporting, every API. And with this, like you said, large registry, you can have this visibility of what's available. And also you can document who is accessing to what, who is the owner of what as well. That's also something important. And what we also are working on is, because data contract is very specific when you are between the company, when you need to have exchange between domains within one company. But what we are also looking for us is working on cases where you have to exchange data with other partners that are outside of the company. And so this is a whole other dimensions that we are working on. And this is another type, I'd say, of data contract. So yeah, so regarding standardization, I think inside you can, of course, standardize, provide some great tool to ensure the whole governance. But when the data or your data products have to go outside of your company, that's a whole other story. So
I find this pretty difficult, to be honest. The thing is, we are all having these efforts around data contracts, and I understand what you were saying, Eric, that it's not easy, and it kind of aligns a little bit. It's a little bit. It's aligning a little bit of how the company is working and the habit of working. Not specifically Conway's law, but more in the habits of how we handle things, so that it's reflecting in the data contract. So having a standardized global intergalactic Star Trek data contract would be ideal, but I'm not seeing it, and I think that's probably explaining as well why there is no, and I'm answering to questions from Peter here. I don't think there is a repository out there of data contracts, because there is no standard in which it would be usable, right? Okay, so one easy question from Andrew, I think I can answer, Andrew, is the relationship between a data contract and schemas. We all agree, do we, that the schema is actually embedded in the data contract? That's one of the elements of the data contract. Yes, no?
From my perspective, I think I'm going to come back to, I can't recall if it was Amy or Charlotte that said what is in the data contract. But so the simple answer is the schema is absolutely a part of the data contract, but it also has, and I took notes when I think it was Charlotte or maybe Amy were talking, but it should also include elements of a glossary, an SLA, probably some security information, some governance or SLA attainment information, quality information, et cetera. So there's much more than just the schema, but the schema is obviously a fundamental part of it.
Right. So Amy, same thing, right? Schema
Same
is
thing.
in.
Yeah, it's not only the schema, it's the conversations and the other stuff that you need to fill out to make sure this is a real contract, right? What if you check a contract, I don't know, for your telecom company, it's not just one page. It's pages and pages and pages and clauses and things that you have to actually read. It's pretty much the same.
Yep. And Charlotte, you agree as well that the data sets is definitely a part of the data contract. Yeah.
Definitely.
So Andrew, you get your answer. So before, so we are 12 minutes to the end, and I've got something at once, so I need to really stop. So I'd like, before we take questions, I see a set of interesting questions, but I'd like to understand a little bit how you would describe the life cycle of a data contract. Okay, so I think, Charlotte, you were the first to mention that. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the life cycle of the data contract.
Yeah, I mentioned indeed the fact that it's going to evolve over time. So I think, yeah, first, because you need to define it with the consumer, but you know how it is. It's the consumer is not going to give everything about his needs exactly in one time. It's really an exercise of iteration here. Of course, I think it's like same principles that we've seen in product management in general. Yeah, you have to iterate, you have to run different cycles before you get the entirety of what the consumers really want. So yeah, I think it should evolve over time, and even when you're at a point where the data product is in production, everything is working correctly, you have to have some alerts and everything to check how it's going to evolve, because sometimes the source or something is going to change. So yeah, that's, I think the beginning is the hardest part, and once you're at further in the process, of course, it's going to be less time consuming to work on the data contract, but it still can evolve. So
yeah, Amy, what's your take on life cycling?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, we have to have these enforcement at the producer level. First, I will say that we need to foster this communication between product and engineering for sure. As Charlotte said, the contracts must be able to evolve with B1, B2, or whatever you prefer with the versioning and change management. It should cover not only the schemas, but also the semantics. So we can understand if it's backward compatible or not, which is, I think, is super important. And actually, I think one of the things that we found is that contracts should be handled with tools already familiar to our backend team, because you cannot, introduce a new tool, then the people is not like really willing to, work with things that they don't know. But if it's something that they already know, it will be much easier, the adoption. And we have to automate it, with the CI/CD pipeline, so it runs automatically, and if we get an alert, it's easier just to fix whatever is broken.
Yeah.
And basically, yeah, I think that's pretty much my takes on the life cycle. As Charlotte says, keep evolving, keep changing, and as I said, and I keep saying, communication is a lot of the key on this topic, because we cannot just go for implementing the technical side, but forgetting about the real needs from business and getting this data product.
Yeah, and as we're bringing more agile, and I think that's what data mesh is a lot about, is bringing agile into the data engineering world as well, right? It's important to think in an iterative way, which is a little bit newer, I would say, in the data engineering world compared to the software engineering world. So what's your take? How do you see your customer, Eric, managing life cycle and versioning of those data contracts?
Sure. First off, I think Amy and Charlotte are spot on. I just to echo, I know the whole aspect around collaboration to reach a data contract is probably the hardest part, but the most important. So I'll say that first. The second thing is I think more and more we're realizing that the data contract is actually a formal software asset, and it needs to be treated as such. And what that practically speaking means is it becomes you apply the regular software engineering life cycle to that. So there's clearly a definition phase. There's a build phase, if you will. There's a deploy where you can, use multiple versioning. You can do A/B testing, if you will, with it. There's a manage phase that allows you, for example, to monitor the service levels, the governance aspects to it. And obviously at the end, there's a retire or a refine. Retire means the thing goes away, but the refine says, hey, I got a new version. I go back to the start of my life cycle. Now, the only other thing I would add, the key to success, and by the way, you don't have to do this with data mesh. Okay, at the one level, data mesh is a set of principles, but the principles are so crucial to what Jean-Georges mentioned. We're bringing agile practice to make data agile, and the key thing here is if you want to ultimately create a data contract, which means bringing, minimal case, one consumer, one producer, but more likely many consumers, many producers together. The fine art of collaboration and compromise is absolutely required, and that's where the concept of a data product, and in particular the owner and the empowerment of the owner, becomes crucial.
Yeah, I love that, and it's once more, it's basically agile methodology applied to data. Maybe I should not be in a room with you because we always agree. So it's almost painful. So really quickly, we've got 5 minutes, and Scott is asking a question. Do you find data registry become stale over time? One answer.
I'll take a start. If there's multiple different ways to do it, the simple answer, if I use the centralized catalog approach, what I think a lot of folks are probably defaulting to, I think the answer is yes. You run the risk of it being stale, mostly because of Conway's law and the lack of incentives to keep it up to date. So unless you can do that, you run the risk of it being stale. My proposition is, in keeping with the data product idea, if every data product can emit the information that is required in the catalog, so I can look at the contracts inside any individual catalog and ensure that it's, by accessing those APIs, it's actually never stale. But if I actually use those APIs and created an enterprise facade on top of it, for lack of a better word, a DNS that lets me find all these data products, why don't I use that facade to query the various registries out there and have them immediately up to date all the time? That, I believe, is the vision for where data contracts actually can go. And I'm in the process of working this out with some of my clients, and the feedback is extremely positive.
All right, next question. I'm from Dwayne. I'm curious, are you and your companies capturing data contracts today outside of a data mesh platform? Can I ask maybe that to Amy?
Yeah, when we began, actually, we didn't have the data mesh, but we already had the vision, to put in place these data contracts to solve these problems, that the data was coming dirty from upstreams. So I think that you actually don't need the data mesh actually to leverage that, but you just have to think on what kind of architecture or infrastructure, you need in order to pull this up. As I said, as long as you communicate with the backend engineers and all that, you don't need data mesh. It's just this organization of getting all these alerts and the stuff to make sure nothing breaks at the beginning, since the very beginning. So you can catch it before it goes downstream.
And question from Maria, maybe Charlotte. Do you also include usability principle, accessibility, discoverability, trustworthy, etc. into data contracts?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to add in a data contract. I think here trustworthy maybe mean that this should be trustworthy regarding quality metrics probably. So yes, for sure. And then you can have other ways to make it discoverable, like we said, with the data catalog. But for sure, the principle of how it should be discovered should be written in the data contract. So I'd say yes.
Okay. I want to wrap up on time, respectful of everybody's time. Amy, where can we find you, or and contact, and what can we wish you in the quick future?
Yeah, you can add me on LinkedIn, as my name is written there, Amy Raygada, and then just shoot me a message if you're interested in knowing more about data mesh, data contracts, and data product management. Always happy to connect.
Awesome. Charlotte, what's next for you?
Yes, same. Connect on LinkedIn for sure. Ask me any kind of questions. Also, I'm on the Slack data mesh available for you. And for those who are in Paris, I recommend you to check the page of the meetup that I co-organized, which is called Paris Data Ladies. A great place also to hear some women tech speakers. So don't hesitate to check this out as well.
And speaking of Paris, if you buy the next issue of the Programmer magazine, you may find an interesting article about data mesh in French. And Eric, what about you?
Sure. You'll find me on LinkedIn, probably the best way to get a hold of me. I also write articles on medium.com, and I'm on the Data Mesh Learning Slack channel, as Charlotte is. And you'll find me on Twitter. Although there's two Eric Brodas, I'm Eric Broda.
What are you mentioning? I think we cannot speak about Twitter anymore, right? It's kind of a taboo subject now. So. Okay, guys, it's 1 p.m. here. It was a fantastic discussion. I think we could last for longer, and it would be about the time to open the Beaujolais Nouveau bottle. But I think we've got to have an end to that. Thank you so much for joining. I know we didn't finish all the questions, but go to the Data Mesh Learning community. You'll find all the bright people there, and you can ask the questions there as well. Thank you so much, and we'll try to do another one. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching this show today. My name is Jean-Georges Perrin. I often go by JGP. I build innovative data platforms at PayPal. I am the president and co-founder of AIUG, the Artificial Intelligence Data and Analytics Users Group. I am also one of the few lifetime IBM champions. I wrote the highly rated second edition of Apache Spark in Action, published by Manning Publication. Please follow me on Twitter and YouTube at JGPerrin. You can also read more about my opinions, my experiences, and all the things my editors didn't want to put in the book or my articles in my blog at jgp.ai. Thank you. Bye for now.